I'm Janet, a 32-year-old waitress. I used to be a bit of a rebel when I was younger. I knew it all. You couldn't tell me anything. Yeah. As you can probably tell, I was really naive. Although I was pretty smart, my grades didn't reflect it. Mainly due to absenteeism from cutting class so much. I hated school and I barely graduated high school. So there was no way I was going to go to college. That was out of the question. But thinking back now, though my life didn't turn out nearly as bad as it could have, I still have a lot of regrets. In my senior year of high school, I fell head over heels with the cutest, most popular boy in school. He was the captain of the football team, at the time. And though he could have anyone in the school he wanted, he chose me, or so I thought. I wasn't his only one. I was just one of many. But I didn't find this out until I discovered I was pregnant with my now 14-year-old mini-me. Her name is Alyssa. Well, when I say mini-me, not indeed, but looks only. She is my identical twin, in looks. But is my polar opposite when it comes to academics and responsibility. I'm very proud of her. But a small part of me feels guilty for having such a wonderful daughter. Because I gave my mother so much grief, it's not fair that it didn't come back to roost through my daughter. So, I'm definitely grateful. I've learned a lot over the years. The unconditional love of my daughter is what brought me to this point in my life. I wanted her to be as proud of me as I am with her. I want to show my mother the love and respect I should have shown her years ago, by raising my daughter well. This is the only way I can apologize to her and show her that her boundless efforts and infinite prayers were not in vain. That's why the sounds of dishes breaking by the new waitress and the string of foul language by the cook. Though he likes to think of himself as a chef, don't bother me one bit. Janet, your regular is here. Brenda called out. Then the entire restaurant could be heard snickering. Everyone knew what this meant. Mr. Brandon was here. He was very strict about how he wanted his food prepared and who he wanted to serve it to him. Which was me. I didn't mind. After the first few months of getting used to each other, he was quite pleasant. Although the other waiters would beg to differ. He could be pretty crude if it came right down to it. And he had a habit of not leaving a tip if he was dissatisfied with the food or service. But if you pleased him, he'd leave a lottery ticket or a scratch-off. Which was the main reason why everyone thought it was so comical that he only requested me to serve him. Some days he would tip and some days he didn't. In their mind, he was a waste of time. But to me, he was sort of a repentance for how I was when I was younger. Through him, I was learning patience and compassion. To be honest, if he had been in my life when I was younger, I'm pretty sure I would have never gotten away with some of the crap I pulled. I may have even gone to college and made something of myself. It was through his influence and coaxing that made me go back to school. He convinced me that it was never too late to do what you want. So in 6 months' time, I will graduate from nursing school and start my new life. And also make my mother and my daughter proud of me. Over the years of serving him, I learned quite a lot about him. He is a widower now, but he and his wife had 2 sons who were honor students and went on to become doctors in their respective disciplines. One is an obstetrician and the other is a pediatrician. He often teased how he taught his sons that, one is to bring them here and the other is to keep them here. But I knew he came here every day because he was lonely. Each of his sons went to universities out of the state. And that's where they met their wives and put down new roots. Essentially, he was alone. "How are your classes?" he asked as soon as I poured water into his glass. No small talk. Straight to the point. It brought a smile to my lips. "I aced my test," I bragged. He gave me a stern expression. The expression a father would give to bring you down a peg or two. "It only gets harder from here. Keep studying," he said. Then he picked up the menu as if he was going to order something from it. But he always got the same thing, without fail. It was just a ritual he did to show indifference. But deep down, I knew he cared. Otherwise he wouldn't push me so hard. "What would you like today?" I asked, going along with the facade that he would actually be ordering something different from the menu this time. He flipped through a few pages, studied it as if he was contemplating something, then slammed the menu on the table. The usual. He barked out. It took all that was in me not to laugh. But I contained myself. As you wish. It'll be right up. When I entered the kitchen, all of the wait staff was huddled together, whispering among themselves. As soon as I came in, the barrage of questions and teasing began. What did he order this time? They all began to laugh. Everyone knew he never ordered anything new. If you get this wrong, you don't deserve a tip. How can you lose a tip for such an easy table? The eruption of laughter filled the kitchen. But it didn't bother me. They were young and dumb, like I was at their age. For that, they were forgiven. I just smiled and said, well, if my service is not up to par, there's no need in complaining for not getting a tip. I'll just have to improve for next time. They all looked at me as if I had grown another head. Each of our jobs relied on the generosity of the patrons. But they failed to realize it was not mandatory. It just taught me to work harder. In doing so, I was also improving myself and my view of the world. I'm glad he doesn't ask for me to serve him. He scares me, Brenda said. What do you two be talking about over there, anyway? Oh, this and that. Nothing too deep. Just idle chit-chat, I lied. I knew if I started divulging some of our deeper conversations, their eyes would just glaze over from boredom. Well, chop chop. You don't want to delay and not get another tip today, Jan said. She had been the one serving him prior to me. As a newbie at the time, I didn't know that when she gave him to me, she was ridding herself of who she thought was a burdensome, old man. The hatred she had for him was exaggerated, making her disdain for him unhealthy. A few dollars should never stand in the way of how you should treat another person. But she was too shallow and too driven by money to grasp that concept. But today, I did not receive a tip. Just a stern, study more. Then he left. My daughter Alyssa and I spent 2 hours each day to study together. It was great bonding time for us. This is when we chatted about our goals and dreams. But most often it turned into girly chat about styles and makeup. Which was kind of fun for me. When I was her age, I didn't have girly talk with anyone my age. Because I was considered a troublemaker, I didn't have many true friends growing up. And when I became a single mother, I was ostracized even more. But to be honest, during that time in my life is when I learned not only to be independent, but I also learned to be dependable. I was forced to grow up really fast. My mother worked and could only offer financial support, but the rest was on me. As for Alyssa's father, well, let's just say he was also knocked down a peg or two. While in high school, he was scouted by every college in the country. He really was that good. As a result, his family accused me of being a gold digger. Like really? What gold? He was a poor, striving high school student like myself. But I guess they were looking further ahead in the future than I ever was. We were just two irresponsible teens who had one slip that cost me my entire life. Not that I'm complaining. I wouldn't have it any other way. In a way, you can say Alyssa saved my life instead of hindering it. Still, his mother and sisters were adamant that he would not be trapped, as they put it, into taking care of an unwanted child. I just had to figure it out on my own. During his first year of college, he received a career-ending injury. Not that I'm gloating. I don't wish that on anyone. But his mother and sisters had to eat a heaping mouthful of humble pie. By then, the damage was done. They were too proud to try and repair what they had broken. Instead, they doubled down on their hatred for me and their disdain for my daughter. Thankfully, her father didn't hold the same opinion. He has been maintaining a healthy relationship with her since his crushed return from college. He eventually got married and has another daughter 3 years younger than Alyssa. They are quite close, thanks to his wife and my insistence they have a relationship befitting as sisters. So I can't really complain about my life. Though I'm not rich or even well off, each step I make towards my goal affords me a more fulfilling life money can't buy. It had been a few weeks and I hadn't seen Mr. Brandon. I was beginning to worry about him. Then he came in the restaurant with another young man. Someone I didn't recognize. But from his appearance, I could tell it must have been one of his sons. "Mr. Brandon, how are you today?" I asked before he sat at his usual table. To be honest, I was so relieved to see him I wanted to give him a big hug. "Is this one of your sons? Don't worry about my business. What about you? Have you been studying?" His son gave me a sideways smirk. You could tell he was saying to himself, "Better you than me." "I have. Otherwise, how can I face you when you come in?" He sat down and instructed his son to sit down opposite of him. "We'll have the usual." "His usual or your usual?" I joked. "You're being mighty snippety today. My usual is his usual. What I get, bring too." His son smiled again, then shrugged his shoulder as if to say, "Don't look at me." You heard him. When I finally made my way to the kitchen, the usual huddle had formed. They couldn't wait for me to enter to start their snickering and teasing. "It looks like your regular has an apprentice," they all began to laugh. But I didn't care. They didn't know that I was so relieved to see him, I wanted to cry from happiness. I hated that he was all alone and sometimes I worried about him. But no one here would understand that. They only saw him as a crotchety old man who was a nuisance. For me though, he was that bridge from the old me to the new me. "This is my boy," he said matter-of-factly when I came back to his table with their food. He finally came to visit his old man. His son looked at me and smiled sheepishly. Correction. I'm here to take him back with me. But he's being stubborn, as usual. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I do. He is quite stubborn, I said teasingly. Mr. Brandon banged on the table. The other patrons jumped from the sound and looked over at his table. The other staff watched and waited for some sort of drama they had in their heads. Are you two ganging up on me? I won't have it. You, eat. You, serve. When I got far enough from his table for him not to be able to hear, the other staff began to ask what happened. It was as if they were expecting food to go flying across the restaurant at any time. Yet, I was as nonchalant as ever. They just didn't understand him. But I did. He knew he was getting up in years and it was a matter of time before one of his boys came to collect him. To a degree, it was as if he was gaining his family back, but also losing his independence. So, when his son came over to speak to me, I already knew. Thank you for putting up with my father all these years. I know he doesn't say it to you, but he thinks of you as a daughter. He talks about you quite often, believe it or not, he said. I'm Derek. I think fondly of your father, as well. He is a father figure to me. I can't begin to tell you how much he has changed my life. And my outlook on life. Knowing him is a treasure, I said. I know he can be hard, but it's all in love. I hope you know that. I do. If not for that tough love, I wouldn't have accomplished as much as I have. I have him to thank for it. Derek handed me a business card. It read, Stephen Brandon, MD, neurosurgeon. All these years I've known him, this was the first time I actually knew what he did for a living. Now it made sense why both of his sons went into the medical field. It ran in the family apparently. I'm taking him back with me to Oregon. You may never see him again, but I would like for you to keep in touch, if you want. He'll love hearing about your milestones and accomplishments in the future. Surprisingly, my eyes welled up with tears. It felt strange crying for a man who had given me a hard time since I met him. I know my coworkers would think I'm crazy for crying about someone who's made me cry and frustrated, all in the same day. But he was a treasure to my life. I was a better person for having known him. I was going to miss him. Thank you for telling me this. I'm glad to know that I wasn't just a bothersome waitress to him, who couldn't even get the simplest of orders correct. If my father asked for you, he saw something in you that warranted his full attention. To him, you are special. I'll tell you something personal that I'd like you to keep to yourself. I nodded. I was becoming too choked up to verbally respond. My father has been dealing with the onset of Alzheimer's disease. It's not critical yet, but it's enough where he can no longer be on his own anymore. My brother and I spoke about it, and we've decided to bring him back with me. He lived in Oregon in his younger years when he and my mother first got married, so it would be a pleasant respite for him. This time I did cry. I couldn't hold back the tears. I was going to miss him very much. But his sons were right in taking care of his safety above all else, including his pride. Mr. Brandon stood up when we approached his table. What took you so long? You know I don't like being kept waiting. I know, Dad. I was just settling the bill. I guess he told you, huh? I'm gonna be leaving here. But that doesn't mean you can slack off. I'll be watching your progress. I'll be expecting you at my graduation in 6 months, I said. Though I knew that would probably be impossible. You can count on it. All of my children are successful. I don't expect anything less from you. You represent me. Don't give me a bad name, he said. I promise. That was all I could manage to get out, or I would really be blubbering right now. I was trying to hold it all in. Mr. Brandon reached over and pulled me to him, giving me the biggest, warmest hugs of my life. I silently cried as he held me and patted my back like a parent would their child. Don't forget to send the invitation. I won't. When he finally left, everyone wanted to know what happened. What did he say or do that made me cry? I only divulged that he was relocating to Oregon with his family. His grandchildren were missing him, and left it at that. They didn't pry any further. As far as they were concerned, it was good riddance. They didn't like him anyway. So when they learned he didn't leave a tip, but a lottery ticket, they laughed so hard they had tears streaming down their faces. Really? How cheap can you get? That's only worth $1. All of that hard work you've done over the years of knowing him, and his last tip is only $1. They spent the remainder of the day laughing and scoffing about how cheap he was and how glad they were to see him gone. But I felt like I was in mourning. I was truly going to miss him. But Mr. Brandon got the last laugh on those scoffers. When I got home, I pulled out the ticket. I was just going to put it in my scrapbook of memories. But something made me look at the date. It was an old lottery ticket. At least a few weeks old. Why would he give me an old ticket? Did he just want me to have something from him? On a whim, I checked the lottery site, just to be on the safe side before I stored it away. My eyes popped open when I read the numbers on the site, then on the ticket. I couldn't believe it. I had to call my mother and daughter over to verify. Was this wishful thinking? Could this be true? Soon my mother and daughter started jumping up and down, hugging me then each other. Oh my God, we're rich. We're rich. It was confirmed. It was a $5 million lottery ticket he had been holding for nearly a month. And he gave it to me as his last gift. The ticket he gave me came with a letter attached. It was short but sweet. It read, love, hope, dream. My oldest son brings in a life. My youngest son takes care of a life. My daughter, you comfort them in their latter years. So it should be of no surprise that I got into geriatric nursing care, in honor of a man who gave love, hope and a dream to a lowly waitress like me.
Thank you for listening to my story. Come back for more stories and help our channel grow. Bye.